Hi, I'm Peggy Slaker. I've been a master gardener here in Nevada County for 9 years. And I was pulled into vegetable gardening by my grandfather, who decided that he really needed a roadside vegetable stand. So he pulled all the grandkids in to be the farm crew. And my memories of that time consist of vivid memories of sunburned shoulders, and also an attitude of curiosity and optimism. And I have to say, moving to Nevada County and gardening, optimism is a really good thing to bring along because you never know what's going to happen here. Today, we'll talk about what might happen with your cool season garden. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Sanicus, and it's a pleasure to be here with Peggy and Kristen. They are just great presenters. I, too, have discovered that optimism is the key. I came here in 2005, and I thought everything would be under control by the time I was old and decrepit. But instead, I just keep having new ideas, and I become a stronger and stronger weed puller. And I realized that the addiction to gardening has to do with looking at the picture on the seed packet and getting excited.
Hi, I'm Kristen Otto, and I've been in Nevada County for about 20 years now. And the first thing I did when I moved here was break some ground to put a vegetable garden in. I really love growing our own food, and I really love teaching other people how to do it. I think it's really important. You can't get much more local than your own backyard. So let's start the slideshow. There we go. So we're going to be talking about cool season vegetables. We're going to be doing this presentation in two parts. We're going to continue. We'll have part 2 next Saturday. So I hope you can join us for that. And again, both sessions will be recorded. So if you can't make one or the other, you can see the whole thing online later. So let's back up and take a look at why we have seasons. And this is kind of basic, and it might go back to your 4th grade school, but I find this stuff really interesting. So here we are on our beautiful blue marble floating around in space. And the Earth turns on its axis every 24 hours, and that gives us day and night. But that axis is not perpendicular. It's at a 23.5-degree tilt. And that tilt is what gives us seasons. So as the Earth goes around the sun in the 12-month year, you can see on the left side of the screen that during the summertime, at summer solstice, the North American, or the Northern Hemisphere, which we are part of, is tilted towards the sun, and that gives us longer days, shorter nights, and much warmer weather. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see the winter solstice, and that the Northern Hemisphere is tilted away from the sun, and that gives us longer nights, shorter days, and much cooler temperatures. So that tilt is really important. So if you bring it down to the ground, so here we are down on the Earth, what that means is that during the winter time, the sun is rising and setting much further to the south, and it's rising much lower. So it doesn't go as high in the sky. So we get longer shadows. The house will cast shadows, buildings, trees. So we get shadows where we don't have shadows in the summer. And you can see on this little diagram, the summer sunrise is much further to the north, and the sun rides much higher in the sky, giving us these long days, much more solar exposure. And the solar exposure is important to plants because the plants need sunlight to do all their processes, all their photosynthesis, which drives everything. So when we have these short winter days, they have less light to do all those processes. And plants have developed different strategies to deal with those shorter days. And that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at the kinds of vegetables that are adapted to those short days, long nights, and cool temperatures.
Right now, as the seasons are changing from our summer garden, where we're enjoying so many delicious things, let's look at the differences quickly between those summer vegetables. Your summer vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini, are the result of pollination of a blossom. After this pollination occurs, the ovary part of the blossom begins to mature and gives us our vegetables. This relies on insects to be the pollinators for the most part, and also hot temperatures. Those things are fading into the memory as fall comes to us. So our question is, what are the characteristics of the cool season vegetables? What can we look forward to planting and eating? First of all, cool season vegetables will grow best between 55 degrees and 75 degrees. We're still quite a bit hotter than that right now, but as the season cools down, we want our plants to be in their growing phase when it hits these temperatures. Not only do they grow best at 55 and 75, they're tough characters. Some of them, when they're mature, can take way lower temperatures. They can tolerate frost when the plant has grown enough so that it is mature when the frosty temperatures hit. And not only that, some of them are really tastier after they've been frosted. The kale, the Brussels sprouts, cabbages, they all get a little bit sweeter as the temperatures cool and kiss them with the frost. We also have discovered that the nutritional value of the fall vegetables, winter vegetables, is frequently higher than our warm season crops. We have those bushels of tomatoes, but the tomatoes and many of the summer vegetables have a great deal of water in them. So in terms of the weight of your harvest, you're going to get more of the plant nutrition from the fall vegetables. You won't have to, for example, when you're cooking with summer eggplant and you have to salt it to get all that water, that gives you a good visual of how much of the plant is water, and we don't have that with our warm season crops. So let's look at different families of your winter and fall vegetables. If we're not going to be eating the blossoms which have generated the tomatoes and zucchini, what part of the plant are we going to eat? Well, in the next couple slides, you'll see that we're eating all the other parts of the plant. We can start out down at the bottom. We have the root crops. These are below the soil, and they are therefore protected from really cold temperatures. We have to wait as the plant grows and the root swells to become large enough to be a significant part of dinner. We have here these lovely beets on the upper right. There's so many beets with so many different colors and designs. It's really hard to decide. We come down to the bottom where we see some carrots. We see also turnips and parsnips. And here I have to add, it's not on our slide, but I have to mention rutabagas just to keep my husband happy. And radishes, if you want instant success, plant radishes. They grow and form their root crops really quickly. Moving on up the plant from the ground, we'll look at the stems. And we have here a very strange looking plant right there at the upper right. This is kohlrabi. I personally feel that this is a native plant from Area 51, which was brought to us by aliens. You can tell because it looks like a spaceship. Going down, we have the broccoli rabe, we have leeks and onions. The green onions, we eat the stems as well as the root portion, close to the root portion of the onions and the garlic. So all of these plants are storing nutrients in their stems, which give us our dinner as well as nutrients in the leaves. You can have cabbages. They're tightly curled leaves that form a head. Lettuce is a bit looser, spinach, parsley. Look at that beautiful chard. We've got all the colors there. Neon chard is really a pleasure to grow. When you have kale, kale comes in quite a variety of appearances. You can go from this beautiful red Russian kale, which is leafy and tender, and you can eat it raw. You have other sturdier kales, which you can toss into soups and stir fries. If you have a picky eater, a kid picky eater, you might lure them in with lacinato kale by telling them that they're eating dinosaur skin because it looks just like a warty skin there. And finally, we come to the top of the plant. Here we do have the flowers involved, but they're immature. We want to eat broccoli and cauliflower before those blossoms open up. And we can use these also, sometimes raw, sometimes stir-fried, all sorts of options. Now, we're going to talk about why it is when it's been 100 degrees out there, why should you be thinking about fall vegetables, and indeed, why should you be starting to put them into the soil?
Okay, so Persephone, in case you didn't quite get the scientific explanation for winter, here's a better explanation. It's a story of beauty. This is Persephone, lust, this is Hades, and passion. And a mother, the mother of Persephone, who did not approve of the relationship. And you can read all about it, but the upshot is that the mother cast upon the earth the curse of winter, long, dark winter, when nothing grows. Starting at our latitude, starting on November the 17th, there are less than 10 hours of daylight. And plants need more than 10 hours of daylight to grow actively. If they are to survive this dark, cursed period, they need to achieve 75% or more of their growth before this deadline of November the 17th. So November the 17th is for our latitude, and that's when the darkness arrives. So the thing is to count back 60 to 90 days from our date here, November the 17th, which puts us right now. So now is the time when we need to be putting in our garden. We can, in part 2 of this workshop, we'll talk more about planting seeds, when to plant, which ones to plant, at different, anyway, more detail next week. But if you should get excited, really excited right now, you can turn off this workshop because it's being recorded. You can catch it later. Run to the farmer's market and buy your starts. Or you can go to other nurseries and buy your starts, but stick with us. And Today is the 29th of August, just by the way, that's when the Nevada City Farmers Market is.
Part of the calculation for your garden starts, whether you're going to use starts or whether you're starting with seeds, depends on when you get the first frost at your house. In our new garden guide, we have the trusty map of first frost and last frost of different areas in Nevada County here. So you can look that up and compare it to what your memories are of previous years if you've been here for a while, or just bank on this being correct and make your calculations when to start your garden. You need to start while the soil is, because the seeds will not germinate in very cold soil. We'll find out next week of what the temperatures are for different seeds to be germinating. And to sum up, we want to have the plants established before the weather gets too cold and the days get so short that the your garden is just in a state of suspended animation, waiting for the days to get a bit longer. One of the things that might be facing you is choosing the place to put your winter garden. If you came to our workshop in the spring, well, in February, back in the days when we could all get together in the same room and smile at each other and bump shoulders, back in those days, we had a workshop on gardening for the whole 12 months of the year. And you would have seen those same slides that Kristen showed about the shadows cast by the changing position of the sun in the sky during the seasons. And if you would run right home at that point and made a note of where all the shadows in your yard are, you're all set. You know exactly where you want to do your winter gardening. If you didn't do that and you're just now considering where, go home and look at the shadows for the next few days and see the area they cover in your yard, and imagine how much smaller the area of sunshine is going to be as the shadows lengthen. So that is your primary thing for choosing new sites for your garden. If you've already got your garden in and you've been gardening in all the space that you can manage, you'll want to choose which portion of that is going to give you the best results in the winter, because gardening is always a gamble. In our summer gardens, we gamble with damage caused by too much heat when the plants won't set fruit. You might have such strong sunshine that your tomatoes and your bell peppers got sunburned, or it's always a concern about irrigation. Your plants are going to just fall over flat on the ground because we don't get irrigation in the summer. In the winter, we have sort of the opposite of those things. We can have temperatures so cold that only certain of the winter vegetables are going to do well for you in your site. If we have really shady days, they're not going to get the sunshine, no matter where they are. If it's too overcast, we'll have a slower start to the garden. And finally, we don't have to worry. Usually, we do not have to worry about lack of irrigation. Sometimes we get so much rain that we wonder how these poor plants are going to be surviving without snorkel gear. So what we want to do is tilt the odds in favor of success for wherever your winter garden is going to be sitting. And one of the first things to consider is your own comfort. If this works for the summer as well, it's convenient to be close to the kitchen. In the winter, if your garden is close to the kitchen, it's really a nice thing because you'll be able to possibly get out there without putting on your industrial strength rain gear. And in case you forgot to pick your harvest before you started dinner, you won't have to take a giant flashlight and dodge the wildlife and get out to the dark areas. Your garden will be right there by the kitchen. So those are factors that are for your comfort, for your plants and the success in growing. This is what we just mentioned. Go out and see where you're going to have the most direct sunshine in the winter, assuming a clear sky, and that's where you want to have your garden. Remember that the sun is so much lower in the sky in the winter, and it casts longer shadows, therefore. So pick the areas where you're going to get the most sun. Also, this varies probably across your property as well as between your site and your neighbors. We are, let's see, blessed or maybe cursed with microclimates that seem like they're about 5 feet wide. You take another 5 steps and you're in a totally different microclimate. So when you're getting ready to put in a new garden bed, evaluate where you are in terms of the flow of cold air in the winter. Cold air flows downhill. It'll settle down at the bottom of an area. It can also be almost collected by trees and bushes. So these areas will have colder temperatures overall compared to the top of the hill. So give a sharp eye looking around your property and evaluate exactly what you can expect in those spots. Finally, although I sort of played down the need for irrigation in the winter gardens, you will probably want to have access to water for the very beginning of your garden. And if you've got those taps nearby, that's a good thing. But you want to remember, as it gets colder and you're outside less and not thinking about this, before you fall into trouble with your water system, insulate those pipes and keep things flowing so that you don't have to deal with broken plumbing. If you're making a new bed for your garden, there are some principles that you can use that apply to garden beds in general, but specifically in the winter. It's a good thing to have your bed raised up off the ground for 2 reasons. First, if the soil is held above the general soil in the ground, it'll warm up faster from sunshine. When the winter days are bright and sunny, the raised bed will be warmer for your vegetable crop more quickly than raising that whole large amount of soil in the ground. There are 2 ways to do that. You can build yourself a bed with some sort of barrier holding the soil up, or you can just mound up soil. Gardening for several years will give you year after year of added compost and generate a bed that's nice and high and rounded. The beds that have the wooden enclosure are really easy to place gopher netting under the soil so that those visitors that want to come and eat your root crops will be frustrated. So that is one advantage of that sort of thing. Here are ways to make raised beds. You can use cement blocks. All of these can be placed on top of the gopher netting, and that will protect your crops to some degree. The cement blocks, the leftover rocks from other projects at home, you can have logs. Someone down here on the lower left has spent some time weaving together long, probably willow branches to hold up the soil. And we have probably our most familiar effort down here on the lower right, using lumber to hold your soil. You can use redwood, you can use cedar. Both of those are resistant to decomposition and can last for a couple decades perhaps. That offsets the fact that they are a more expensive sort of lumber. If you're using plain pine, you have the choice of treated lumber or untreated lumber. In 2003, legislation was enacted to stop using arsenic as a preservative in the lumber. So that negative choice has faded away from the market. But there are still preservatives, copper preservatives, used now to slow down the attack by fungus and other pests on the lumber. There are a lot of, well, there are several different kinds of preservatives, and all of them come with warning how to manipulate the boards and that sort of thing. So if you choose to use treated lumber, check with your supplier and find out what you should be doing to keep yourself safe while you are building your bed. We talked a lot about mulch in the compost seminar, and we'll be talking about it in the soil seminar that's coming up later. When you have your garden beds in the winter, mulch only the pathways, because remember, we're raising the soil up to help it stay warmer, and the mulch will prevent the sunshine from hitting the soil, and it will reduce the amount of heat that your soil can collect. So mulch your walkways with straw or wood chips or pine needles, possibly even just big leaves that you've raked up. Any of those things can mulch your bed and keep your footing dry as you're walking around your garden in the winter. We will be talking more about soil. And here we have a picture that ought to have a big round circle with a slash through it saying, "Don't do this to your soil."
Okay, so we have two workshops that are really, really important for any vegetable gardener to avoid the dust bowl. The first one was our compost workshop, which we did on Zoom last week, and it's now available as a YouTube. You can click on the link on the Master Gardener website. We also, it is an abbreviated workshop, the 1 hour Zoom workshop. So you can see the complete expanded 2 hour workshop slideshow with speaker notes also on the Master Gardener website. And because we usually do a live compost, poking at the compost as part of our live workshops, we did an addendum video of my own compost pile. And it's 15 minutes, but I think it's really interesting because manure is incorporated, there's kitchen waste, there's actually weeds gone to seed, and it's a long pile. So you can see every stage of decomposition as sort of a microcosm of what your pile would be like. So if you watched that compost pile tour, you may be in suspense as to what happened to the corn stalks. Well, we are going to do a sequel so that you can see how they're decomposing. So the other workshop that is coming up that's essential to the gardener is the soil workshop. And you can remember this because it's on Halloween, and our title is from Frankenstein, it's alive. I think that's the title anyway. So also, in addition to these two workshops, each workshop has a slideshow, as I said, and a ton of handouts that, because we're online now, we can give you a ton of handouts. We don't have to waste paper Xeroxing handouts.